Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is part two.
It feels like we're going to a time period now where it's a suppression of it, and that's what and trying to suppress it at a younger age so that when they get older they don't question things. I don't know if it's the system
Which
that's doing that or if they're actually deciding like is it that like diabolical, like they're sitting there going, if we take this away, this will this will make them
yeah,
all.
I think there are some individuals that are that diabolical. I mean, for sure, but I also from like working with and talking to educators, it's also just like such a massively disorganized bureaucratic system that
Yeah.
you know, decisions about curriculum are not necessarily being made with a lot of intentionality, and that's, naturally going to lead to suppression of information. And I think, there have been I one of my favorite writers is Octavia Butler, and I think she's been warning us since the 80s that information and the distribution of the information is really what dictates what happens to us as a species, and it's one of the
Yeah.
most powerful things that we can take control of. And it's such an interesting time with AI because I think, when we think about like the robot revolution or whatever, all of us saw iRobot, and that's like what we
Yeah.
picture, robots in the streets with guns, like fighting or whatever. But I really think what's so terrifying about AI is that the most powerful social movements have been spurred on by writing and by the distribution of information. And if AI gets to a point where they can write articles and generate articles that we don't necessarily register as AI, then I think
Yeah.
the power is really in the hands of the AI to move people in all sorts of directions.
Are you familiar with the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard? I'm butchering his name, but he wrote the book called Simulacra and Simulation, which was one of the
Oh,
bases for. Okay, you know what I'm
I'm
talking
I'm
about.
not I'm not super familiar with him, but I do know about a little bit about this philosophy. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the
Yeah.
idea that the destruction of meaning, and he believes that after JFK, that pretty much we've every president has been somewhat of the same since then, and that if you kind of destroy meaning, you destroy kind of like the point. Um,
Mhm.
is that, I mean, it sounds so insidious, but like, is that like where, do you think it's just where technology is going and we're just not keeping up? Or do you think it is like people are plotting this and are seeing this and this is like been decided on? This is the thing I always kind of go back on is like, is this a decision to destroy meaning or is this just what's happening because technology is going so fast? AI, we're about to have like godlike technology, and
Mhm.
most people can't even sit through a 2-hour movie without pulling out their phone.
Yeah. Well, I do personally. I don't want to. I would say like in many senses, I love AI. Like AI is one of my favorite technological developments. I use Chat GPT all the time. She's helping me plan my vision board for 2025, and it's so
Oh, that's so
helpful.
cool. I
Yeah,
didn't even think about that.
I like took all my goals that I wrote down and I was like, "Can you break these down into actionable steps?" And she did, and it was so helpful. And like, it's not perfect, but it also
Yeah.
gave me like all these resources. I've been researching like graduate schools, and I've been trying to compare like graduate schools versus just taking like independent film workshops, and which is going to get me further. And like I've been exposed to all these online resources for teaching myself film just from asking Chat GPT. So I think the endurance of machines that humans don't have, like they don't have to sleep, they can sift through
Yeah.
mountains of information so quickly, like that is so awesome. I do think that we've seen previously that technology is kind of always a reflection of the humanity that created it. And so I think while we live in a patriarchal, heteronormative, racist society, and while those people are really the ones funding this technological development, it's always going to reflect their philosophies and their worldviews.
Yeah.
And so I think, it really, um, I just could never like disparage AI and say that AI is going to be evil, because it really feels like, okay, that the AI is learning off of the information that we put on the internet, and they're learning off of our behaviors and our worldviews. And so if it is going to a scary place, I really feel like that's a huge reflection of where we're at with humanity. And I think that's also why it's so important to make education in STEM fields so accessible to underserved groups in the community, because when it's all white rich guys that are programming the computers, then you have
Yeah.
all sorts of horrible issues that come up
Yeah.
with that, for sure. And it's such a reflection of the society we're in.
Yeah. I mean, George Lucas talked about that. He said, AI is going to go bad because we made it bad, not
Mhm.
because it did. And I thought that was an interesting, because
Damn,
he's
he just
always
said what
looked at,
I said in a single
yeah.
sentence. That was the perfect summary. That's
um,
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, if
Mhm.
you look at his films, like, look at C-3PO and R2-D2, these are not bad machines. They're kind of almost annoying at times.
Mhm.
He sees them as working alongside us. I think that's kind of where we need to go. Like, if I get a line in like a script that I find is not working well in my tongue, I'll take that line and I'll put it into Chat GPT and say, write me a tongue twister so that I can get used to
Oh,
saying
that's
those
such a good
words.
use for that. I love
Yeah,
that.
and it works so well, and I'm like, oh wow, now it's there. Now it's like, so this idea to like just demonize AI, I think is the wrong move. It's just like, how are we going to go about it? How are we going to walk with this technology?
Mhm.
Are we going to use it as a tool, or are we going to use it to just replace everything, and we'll just be tubs of goo?
Oh,
Like in
for
Wally.
sure. I think that's such a valid fear that we have, for sure, is if we're not using this technology intentionally, if we're not developing it intentionally, then it really is so quick
Yeah,
to spiral out of our control, for sure.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
the fear I have is now it's kind of an arms race. Like,
Mhm.
one of the things I found out about, when Oppenheimer came out, I was like, oh, got to go and find out all about this stuff. It's like, originally, FDR wanted to release it to the United Nations and have it be kind of like a decision we all make. And
Mhm.
we kind of went against it and just like, no, well, the next president, he wanted to put his mark and, be the guy that ends World War II. I don't know that for a fact, but, I know human nature, and it's like, I can just, FDR did all these great things. How am I going to stand up to, oh, I ended World War II with the atomic bomb? But that started the nuclear arms race, because now everybody's like, well, I want to make one. And now I want to make one. And
Mhm.
I feel like now we're kind of with that with AI, because now every country is like, well, we want to get to, the next version of AI. That's the
Mhm.
only scary thing is like, if like, a Russia gets there before us, and it's just like, well, who cares? We don't need any safeguards. Just do whatever.
Yeah. No, totally. I get that for sure, because I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is when we start to have discussions about slowing down and making more laws around AI that are helpful to
Yeah.
society. I think the talking point that everyone always has is, well, what about Russia? Aren't we scared of Russia?
Yeah. So they like to
And
use that boogeyman thing. It's just like, well, we got to do this, and it's like, but that can go on forever. Eventually somebody has to say, here's what I like what your idea was to, let's bring in more people. Let's bring in more.
mhm.
Let's not just have the same programmers doing this. Let's have different voices in the room so that it it doesn't just learn, like you said, an autocratic way of thinking, or a capitalistic way of thinking.
Mhm.
Sorry, I interrupted you there, but I had to
No,
get
no,
that
no, totally. That's
out.
exactly, well, that was the thought I had with Oppenheimer as well, and with the atomic bomb was, okay, well, if society is set up in such a way that most of us would like to take this to the United Nations, but
Yeah.
one guy's power trip means that this is now an arms race. I think we have to,
Yeah.
at a certain point, like, I think hopefully our generation, maybe the next one,
Yeah.
but I think at a certain point we have to treat not just the symptoms, but the original issue, which is that the people that get voted into power and given nuclear codes do not make decisions based on what is popular in society at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the stat for pro-choice is like 70% of, at least 70%, maybe higher, of the country is in favor of abortion under at least some circumstances. And then you have
Yeah.
lawmakers that don't make laws based on what the popular feeling at the time is. And so, how did we give them this power in the first place? Maybe it's not our fault. Maybe we didn't set this up this way. But
Yeah.
if we're so unhappy with it, can we restructure society? You
Yeah.
know?
How do we take democracy and restructure it in a way so that it actually reflects the service of the people? Because I think you brought up a point. It's like so much. Now we're getting into the big problem, which is money in politics.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.